All right, Kevin, back with you with another episode of the $1,000,000 Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with my friend Craig. Craig, welcome. So awesome to have you here today.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. It's great being here. Enjoyed chatting with you before. Looking forward to it again.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, there's a story there because you and I were actually scheduled to record this interview last week, but we got so engaged in the conversation that you and I we're just like, you know what? Let's just do the podcast interview later. We just wanted to get to know each other a little bit more and stuff. So sometimes things don't always go as we planned, but yet they go exactly how they're supposed to go.
Exactly.
So yeah, I am really excited to have this conversation with you today, Craig, and be able to share this with everybody else. And so what we'll do is we'll just start by I'll just like turn it over to you so that you can share a little bit of your background as far as like what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work you get to do, and we'll just start there and set a little bit of context.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm a marketing consultant, and we work with companies that have high dollar, high ticket products or services that require a high level of trust. And that could be a variety of things. In the B2C space, it could be financial advisors. In the B2B space, we have a client that does outsourced software development to larger companies. And we've done professional liability insurance for attorneys. We just anything that's a high ticket item that requires a high level of trust. We've got a formula that works really well for that.
Okay. How long have you been doing this, Craig?
So doing this in particular, it's right around 10 years. I used to market chips for mobile phones. I spent about a decade in the mobile phone industry, and those were low ticket but high volume, and drove about $500 million of revenue over there. But also, very, very important relationships. You meet. Remember having lunch with one person at Samsung that could make or break your company if you're in the mobile phone space.
I come out of the Dan Kennedy world, and Dan has many times I've heard him say the worst number in business is one. One of anything, one client, and so I've always taken that to heart, and been resourceful and would make sure I was not in a situation where I had one of anything, one thing that one method of getting clients, and I have had friends that have had like an overwhelming percentage of their company's revenue that did come from a single client. And if that client goes away, that's a big hit. That's a big hit. And yeah.
Oh, it's scary. So I'm in Austin. There's a semiconductor company here, Cirrus Logic. 80% of their revenue comes from Apple.
Okay.
80%.
Yeah, that's huge.
And Apple is a very, very tough customer.
Yeah.
And so if you upset that, your company goes under overnight.
Yeah. Not a position that I would want to be in, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that we've got a little bit of context set here, let's go ahead. I'm going to switch gears, and what I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of the listeners. So, Craig, have you ever met or been introduced to a person or persons that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And Craig, I'm just really excited to give you an opportunity to share your story and your experience around this, as well as be able to honor somebody who have had such a profound impact on your life and on your business.
No, absolutely. And I'm going to answer that from two ends.
Okay.
One is the personal end and the other is the business end.
Okay.
So I spent 6 years in the Marine Corps, which is what took me so close to where you live up at Whidbey Island.
Yep.
And I was on deployment to Japan, Iwakuni, Japan, and I met a couple named Mike and Brenda Smith. Amazing, amazing people that became mentors to me. And outside my parents, they have impacted my life more than anybody on this earth. And they've shared so much wisdom with me about life and about relationships, about navigating through disagreements. Just amazing, amazing people. And about 18 months ago, I was in the hospital fighting for my life with COVID. I was in the hospital for 3 months, and the doctors told my wife from the first day they put me on the ventilator, they said he's not going to make it. They had her meeting with hospice to plan the day what they would pull the plug, and for a solid month, she was pretty certain I was not going to make it. And 3 days before they put me on the ventilator, I got an email from Mike Smith asking for prayer for his daughter, Kristen. And she had just died on the ventilator of COVID, from COVID.
Wow.
And, and then 3 days later, it's lights out for me. I wake up about 6 weeks later, leave the hospital, a couple of months later, and Kristen's brother reaches out to me, and he says, I need some help with marketing. And I said, well, Michael, I'm taking the rest of the year off, recovering. I'm completely depleted. I'd lost 40 pounds in the hospital. I was having to learn how to walk again. The rest of that year was basically just trying to get, functional. And so I told him, I said, I'm not working, just, can you reach back later? And I was really hoping he would kind of go, not come back for work, just because that relationship was so important to me. I didn't want to any way muddle it. Mm-hmm. Well, he came back again, and I said, I'm still not ready to go back to work. And he came back a third time, and I said, okay, well, let's get on the phone. And he told me what was going on. And, a couple things I knew right away. One was his business wasn't at a point that could support our fees. But two, he was hopelessly lost. And so I recommended that he buy something we call a first time offer. It's our first engagement with any business. And it's priced, we price it like $497, $497. And it's just a symbolically low price. But I knew that would give him a marketing plan and a framework so that he could go and at least have direction and hopefully make fewer mistakes.
Okay.
But while I'm doing this, I'm realizing, it's very present in my mind that I survived a disease that killed his sister. And when I was going through that, I was struggling with survivor's guilt. A lot of people died from COVID, and you're just sitting there wondering, why did I live and these people die? Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there thinking, and it kind of ties in something that I believe, and that is, if you wouldn't send your best friend through your sales funnel, you have a broken funnel. And so I got that for him, and sure enough, he we completed the work. He couldn't afford the fees, but he had that direction. And to this day, I can look his mom and his dad, Mike and Brenda, in the eye, and I can say, I took care of your son. And it's so important for me to be able to do that and feel good and sleep well. Well, this whole concept of a first-time offer kind of ties in the business side of the world. And so as I live in Austin, Texas, and there's this place down here called the Wizard Academy. Mm-hmm. And I ran into some folks affiliated with that, and they said, well, you should really come out there. And And I did. And I would say the tribe at the Wizard Academy um, just really radically changed my world from a business standpoint. And this whole concept of a first time offer is something that came from that. So from
Okay.
the business side, from these business people that changed my life, I was able to serve the son of a very important mentor in my life. So some of the
Mm.
people in the Wizard Academy, there's Roy Williams, there's Daniel Whittington, Ryan Dice was chairman of the board of the Wizard Academy for a while, and collectively these people really helped me reshape things about creating delight. I mean, my whole understanding of delight comes from Roy Williams. He said, without surprise, there is no delight. And so when we're thinking about, you know, designing customer experiences, we intentionally design in moments of delight. And it can't be something that somebody's expecting. It has to come as a surprise, because Roy keeps saying, without surprise, there is no delight. And this first time offer is something that, I got bits and pieces from multiple people, including Ryan Dice. Yeah, he used to call it a tripwire or an entry point offer, but those were structured more for like simple products or services. But when you're getting to a high ticket product or service, it's a much more complex offer. And so we had to evolve it to do that. But again, the kind of the seed of thought, got from Ryan, and just started developing, and a lot of it trial and error. I fumbled around for like 18 months making mistakes before we started getting it dialed in. But I hang out at the Wizard Academy regularly, um, pretty much every Friday.
Oh,
And
okay. Okay.
yeah, I was there last Friday, and it's so neat. Some of the rules that they apply there is on Friday nights, you're not supposed to talk work, politics, or religion.
Okay.
And so it forces us to talk about other things, and including art and things like that. And I've met an amazing artist there, and you just see how they approach things in the world and how they challenge things, take on challenges in their life, and it does impact, and it has impacted me in the way that I approach things.
Yeah.
And it's really neat. My wife, years ago, my wife and I were talking. I was debating doing an investment of, I was going to take a course at this other place, or I was going to take a course at the Wizard Academy. And she said, I really think you should do the one at the Wizard Academy. I think that's probably going to impact your life more. And wow, was that the understatement of the year?
It's interesting. I've only been to the Wizard Academy one time. It was for a 2.5 day event. It was last year. It was for an event that Alex Mendozian put on called the Pathfinder Mastermind. And Roy was there one day. He came and shared. So I got to meet Roy for the first time at that event. And there was another gentleman, there was a couple other gentlemen that helped facilitate that 2.5 day gathering. And I'll tell you, I just really appreciate the insight that they shared. Even though they weren't like part of the group per se, Alex, I do know, even though that was my first time ever attending, I know he's hosted a number of masterminds there at that facility. And so it was a really amazing experience, a unique facility, a unique setting, definitely top quality entrepreneurs, high level entrepreneurs who are making a real impact in the world, go there. And yeah, I didn't know what to expect before I got there, but once I was there, I was like, wow, I was completely blown away, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious now, if we look, at and you can, whether you want to look at Mike and Brenda, and I don't know how close you were with their daughter or their son, or like, like you mentioned, meeting Roy and Ryan and the other people you've met through Wizard Academy and stuff. If you look at any one of these relationships. And thinking back on that, where because of one of these relationships, that it allowed you or you and them to have this big impact that hands down would have never happened if not for your relationship with them. What comes up? I mean, I just kind of like to dig into this a little bit and see, because it really demonstrates the power of these relationships.
Yeah. So if I were to look at the Wizard Academy, well, one, I don't think we'd be talking.
Okay.
Yeah, if it weren't for that, because um they were they it was through a mastermind I was in with Ryan that he somebody pointed out, hey, there's this podcasting thing that you should get into. And I was like, well, that sounds kind of interesting. And that's kind of led exactly to us talking right here, right now,
Yeah.
is that came through Ryan. Um, the I can say that through, well, one, I've had a chance to meet a truly brilliant publisher that half of the books he publishes become bestsellers.
Okay.
And he has, I think, still the #1 sales book in the world. It's the Little Red Book of Sales or something like that. Little Red Sales Book. He did what's his name? Keller and Williams, the real estate agency, the One Thing.
Mhm.
That's another one of his publications. And being able to meet him and just hear how what it takes to get published. Right now I'm working on a book that I'm working on getting published. And so much of my approach to that would just be completely lost without these insights from just a remarkably successful publisher that I met uniquely through the Wizard Academy.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. I mean, and like I love hearing about that kind of stuff, because the one thing I've known for years, and it's become it's really solidified through hosting this podcast, is that as entrepreneurs, relationships are the most valuable asset that we possess, and everything else stems from that. And when we place an intentional focus on creating more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in our lives, well, that's how we get to make our biggest impact in the world, because we can do far more when we collaborate together with like-minded people than we ever can try to do it on our own.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, and let me share an example of that. I mean, here's
okay.
another example. So I mentioned that I went in the hospital, was unconscious for 6 weeks. Obviously, I couldn't run my business. I
Yeah.
couldn't run it. Fortunately, I had a gal named Libby Ball who was running my business. She just stepped right up and ran the business while I was out. But there were multiple people actually from the Wizard Academy that reached out to Libby while I was in the hospital, and each brought their own specialty. And they said, as long as Craig's in the hospital, anything you need done, we will do it.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
You want to talk about just amazingly powerful relationships. I mean, when I woke up and my wife started filling me in on the gaps of what had been happening while I was out, and I find out that these people had been stepping up and saying, we will do whatever you need while Craig's in the hospital. I was just blown away.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just so incredibly blown away.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yeah, and I mean, what an example of not just the power of relationships, but that, these people just wanted to do their part, to just help, to contribute, to serve, to pour into you at a time when you really just, all you needed at that time was time to recover and just let yourself heal and get better at stuff. And these people all stepped in to just kind of, fill in their role of just giving you that space and grace and just allowing that to happen. And they did that with no expectation of getting anything in return. But yet, because I've experienced stuff like that too, and it just endears us to those people, and it just causes us to be like, wow, I really appreciate these people in my life. And my gosh, if there was anything that I could do to help them, well, I would certainly want to do that as well. And like, that's just the relationship. It's not this, we give to get. It's not that kind of relationship. We just give because it feels so great to give, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, and here's something, I've had a rare opportunity to look through a lens that most people never get to see. I mean, they really thought I was going to die. I mean, there was not, they didn't say he may die or his chances are low. They're like, no, he's going to die. I mean, my second day on the ventilator, they put me on dialysis. I went into kidney failure. They drugged my wife into a room and they put my chart on the wall, and it said prognosis, multiple organ failure leading to death. I mean, and then, like I said, they had her meeting with hospice to plan the day they would pull the plug.
Wow. Wow.
And there was so that was, they put me on the ventilator September 22nd, 2021. And about 1 week later, when it looked certain that I was a goner, I got a couple text messages that people sent to my phone. They were reading my wife's journal. They knew I was not conscious, but they send these text messages, and these are just the most glowing, wonderful messages that would warm your heart. One said, you're a better friend than I've ever deserved, and this, that, and the other. And they were wanting my wife to read those to me while I was unconscious. What's really interesting is when I woke up, those people were hard to find. When I came out of that, those people were hard to find. But the overwhelmingly wonderful thing is that the vast majority of people, their actions when they thought I was going to die remained consistent once I lived, and they just were consistently pouring in. And and people wonder sometimes what would it be like at their funeral. And I feel like I got to see a vision of that, and then get to see how much of that was real versus how much of that was just fluffy words.
Yeah.
When they thought I was a goner.
Yeah.
And and the thing that moved me the most, and I'll tell you, I believe my biggest accomplishment, and my proudest, let me say it this way, my proudest accomplishment in business is that when I checked out unexpectedly, my business kept running because the team kept it running.
Yeah.
And not only that, but these friends, these valuable people in my life stepped in to provide when I was out. There's, I mentioned I was in the Marine Corps. There's a retired Marine that lives down the street without even being asked, he didn't even ask. He shows, my wife hears some noise out in the yard one day. She looks out and he's mowing our grass. And he mowed our grass until I got out of the hospital.
Wow. Wow.
Without asking. He didn't ask her. She didn't ask him. He just like, Craig needs his grass mowed. I'm going to mow it.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's just an amazing time. And, when I was in my third hospital, it's what an ordeal. I was in 3 hospitals. The last hospital was a rehab hospital. I was there for about 3 weeks. That's where I learned how to walk again. And just starting. And one of the guys from the Wizard Academy reached out and said, "Hey, we miss Craig on Friday nights. We want to do a virtual happy hour." And so my wife brought my iPad into my hospital room, and I did a little happy hour with the guys out at the Wizard Academy. And like I said, I got out of the hospital November 6th. I could walk, but maybe 30 feet, 30, 40 feet, not very far. And when December rolled around, I asked my wife, I said, I'd really like to go to the Wizard Academy tonight. And she said, okay. And so we got in the car, went over there. And it was funny. I had to call into the guys, and they're literally like 50 feet from me. I'm like, okay, where are you sitting? I'm just trying to map out, because once I started moving, I had to move, get to my seat. There was no deliberating. I had to walk a straight path. And so once I understood where they were, I get out of the car. My wife has my walker out. I pick it up. We should have left it in the car because I couldn't use the walker on that ground. But I just beelined it over to where all the guys were sitting, guys and gals. And somebody quickly cleared a seat for me, and I sat down. And they were so excited to see me. And they were like, "Hey, man, how are you doing? How are you doing?" And I just put up a finger, and I'm sitting there. I'm panting like I just sprinted a mile. And I said, "I just need a minute." And it took probably 4 or 5, and I caught my breath. But it was just such an amazing experience to see these people rooting for my survival, celebrating my survival, celebrating us coming back together on Friday nights as things as had not happened for several months.
Yeah. Just really lets you know, an experience like that just really lets you know how appreciated you are. And that's powerful. That's powerful. Well, Craig, I really want to thank you for taking the time to have this conversation today and to be able to, because like I said, my goal for this podcast, for people like yourself to be able to give you an opportunity to share your story and your experience around your most valuable relationships, to be able to give an opportunity for you to honor these people who have had such a profound impact on your life and on your business. Then also for the listeners, I love having these conversations, knowing that, we are inspiring them to place an intentional focus on creating more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in their own life. And we have definitely delivered on that today, Craig. And so, for anybody listening to this going, "Man, Kev, I really like Craig. I love the way that Craig shows up. I'd like to learn more about the work that Craig and them are doing." How can they find out more about the work that you guys are doing, Craig?
Sure. They can come to our website, which is alliesforme.com. And that's spelled ALLIES, the number 4, ME.com. There's a way to contact us there. But I made a gift for your audience. And, I mentioned earlier the first time offer, we didn't talk about it much, but, one of the things I believe high ticket sales are broken in their structure, because you go from introduction to straight to the high ticket purchase. And we really believe there should be something that looks more like a coffee date in there, not a literal coffee date, but just a smaller engagement where you get to know each other, and it's in the context of relationships. When you go into a coffee date with, if you're courting somebody, you go into a coffee date, you both hope it leads to something bigger. And when you do it right, it does build these lasting relationships that are built on trust. And so we have a guide about how to put those together. They look simple, but they're a little bit complex. I fumbled around for about 18 months trying to figure it out. And so we have a guide that will help you skip some of the mistakes I made.
Oh.
And then we have a course, a little 23-day self-paced course that you'll get access to. And so if you want to get that, just go to the same URL, alliesforme.com/million-dollar-relationships, all one word, all smushed together, all lowercase, alliesforme.com/million-dollar-relationships. And you'll get those two things. And, my hope is that I really want to transform the way we do business on high ticket sales. I think there's something very broken about it. And, I think a first time offer is a big step towards fixing that.
Yeah. Well, in fact, I made a note of that when you said it, that if you wouldn't send your best friend through your sales funnel, you've got a broken funnel. And that is really huge. That is really huge because, yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot there. And that, because I know I've used this analogy in my own, it's been a litmus test that I've used for a long time, in that, anybody that I'm thinking of working with or partnering with, I always ask myself, is this somebody that I would invite into my home for dinner with my family? And if the answer is not a resounding yes, I'm like, well, then why would you consider working with them or partnering with them if you wouldn't do that? And so that's a huge litmus test right there. And I know, because I feel that way, that anybody that I do work with, I mean, there is no hiding the fact of how much I appreciate them, how much I love working with them, serving them, all of that kind of stuff. Nobody ever gets this feeling that, like, Kevin doesn't appreciate me, Kevin doesn't enjoy working with me, Kevin, I never feel that way, because I'm just energized by the work that we get to do and the difference that we get to make in this world and stuff. And I'm sure, the same is true for you, Craig, and the people that you serve through doing what you do, because you're using a very similar litmus test here, so kudos. Well, anything last thing you want to share before we call it a wrap, Craig?
No, just something we talked about before, just how small the world is, that we just meet, and I used to live 25 minutes from you.
Yeah.
And in Washington, and the folks at the Wizard Academy, and you've been here in Austin, and it's just so cool to look at how lives intertwine and how we touch people adjacent to ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the world really is a small place, and that whole thing. I try to remember. Joe Polish says it a lot. Treat people well. Treat people the way that you would want to be treated, because the same people that you meet on the way up are the people that you meet on the way down. And there's so much to be said for that. Just that simple, the golden rule, if you will: treat others how we'd want to be treated. And that you can never do wrong with that. That's for sure. And it is a small world. It's definitely a small world. And well, Craig, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation. Really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. It's been a delight. Thank you. And I appreciate you. So much fun.
Absolutely.